I have no more campaigns to run. I know because I won both of them.
The leader of the Stop Trump movement is now and always has been Donald Trump. Only Donald Trump can stop Donald Trump from winning the Republican presidential nomination. Every day that he went up in Republican polls, he was becoming more and more disliked and disapproved of by more and more American voters outside the Republican Party, the voters who will actually decide who the next president is going to be. Last night, Donald Trump disappointed his enablers in the media and elsewhere who have been suggesting that any minute now he was going to switch from being a relentlessly ignorant vulgarian to suddenly being presidential. Donald Trump had his 27-year-old campaign press secretary, who has never worked on a political campaign in her life before, put out a statement under her name that was no doubt dictated by the candidate, who is 42 years older than she is, but sounds less than half her age. The statement, of course, called last night's Republican winner, Ted Cruz, Lion Ted, and accused him of committing the federal crime of coordinating campaign spending with a super PAC without any evidence of that crime. It was a bitter, petulant, entirely childish statement. At the very same time that last night's Republican Party loser, Donald Trump, issued that statement, last night's Democratic Party loser, Hillary Clinton, issued a statement on Twitter that was the picture of campaign professionalism. It was a model of being gracious and generous in defeat. Hillary Clinton said, "Congrats to Bernie Sanders on winning Wisconsin, to all the voters and volunteers who poured your hearts into this campaign. Forward." Signed it with her little H there at the end. The difference between Donald Trump's statement and Hillary Clinton's statement last night is the difference between being presidential and being Donald Trump. Donald Trump's campaign manager, who has never run a presidential campaign before and is the only presidential campaign manager in history to be criminally charged with battery against a reporter, was asked by the Washington Post last night if Donald Trump is going to follow Newt Gingrich's advice and make the transition, quote, to being really professional presidential candidate. The reply was, absolutely not. We have from day one run the same campaign. We're going to continue to execute. We're not going to blow up the model. Here is the model they're not going to blow up.
Now, Donald, what does Tiffany have of yours and what does Tiffany have of Marla's?
Well, I think that she's got a lot of Marla. She's really a beautiful baby, and she's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet, but time will tell.
I know you're experiencing Trevor Noah's shock there, and it was the Daily Show that used that last night. That's where we found it. I'm going to let you just adjust to that for a moment, the way he had to. We're going to show you that again, because you are no doubt still working through that shock. And this is a new dad, remember. This is new dad, Donald Trump, in 1994, talking about the birth of his fourth child, his first child with the second Mrs. Trump, his second baby girl. And what you're going to hear him say again is something I know you have never heard from the father of a newborn daughter. It is unthinkable, as any father of a newborn daughter can tell you, but you don't have to be the father of a newborn daughter to know that. Here once again, if you're ready for it, is Donald Trump speaking about his new baby girl.
Now, Donald, what does Tiffany have of yours and what does Tiffany have of Marla's?
Well, I think that she's got a lot of Marla. She's really a beautiful baby, and she's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet, but time will tell.
So you see, Donald Trump has always been his own worst enemy, All of the worst things we know about Donald Trump have come from his mouth, and so it was last week when he tried to win hearts and minds in Wisconsin.
I expect that from a 12-year-old bully on the playground, not somebody who wants the office held by Abraham Lincoln. Your wife is a beautiful, classy woman. Why can't you say the same about Ted Cruz's wife?
I don't know Ted Cruz's wife. I'm sure she's excellent. I mean, I just don't know her.
How do you ban abortion? How do you actually do it?
Well, you know, you'll go back to a position like they had where people will perhaps go to illegal places, but you have to ban it.
A new McClatchy-Marist national poll of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents shows Donald Trump at 40%, Ted Cruz within the margin of error at 35%, and John Kasich at 20%. Joining us now, Katie Packer, founder of Our Principles, an anti-Trump PAC. She was the deputy campaign manager of the Romney 2012 campaign. Also, Stuart Stevens, columnist for the Daily Beast and the former chief strategist for Mitt Romney's presidential campaign. Back with us again, Charlie Sykes, radio host of WTMJ AM in Milwaukee and the editor-in-chief of Right Wisconsin. He has endorsed Ted Cruz, and he's one of the leaders of the Stop Trump movement. And Charlie, you succeeded in Wisconsin on the Stop Trump movement. And the case I'm making is, yes, you know, Katie Packer and others get out there and they ran ads against Donald Trump, but I don't see any more effective voice against Donald Trump than Donald Trump's own voice. That's what you used, in effect, against him in that interview with him.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is that nothing seems to move the hardcore Trumpkins, even that really, really creepy video. But what we discovered in Wisconsin, though, is we can put together a coalition of the sane, a coalition of decent people who see that, recognize it for what it is. And in Wisconsin, at least, look, there's going to be 35% or so of people who are just going to accept anything that Donald Trump says, no matter what. But then you have the 65 to 70% of Republican conservatives who look at that the way you look at this and go, look, this man is absolutely unfit to be president of the United States. This is just appalling behavior. And, you know, unfortunately, you can't move the needle with the hardcore people, but there are the folks out there, the coalition of the decent, the coalition of the sane. Hopefully you folks can do that in New York.
Stuart Stevens, one of the silliest things I've been hearing for many weeks now on TV talk about Donald Trump are people who come on and say, well, you know, they're going to get him in line now. He's going to turn. He's going to become presidential. And you've worked with a lot of candidates, and I'm sure you've spent a lot of time trying to switch the style of a lot of candidates and try to move them into a more winning performance style. I've never seen handlers of candidates who really were able to do that and really change the style of a candidate. What's your bet on the prospects of Donald Trump somehow becoming what people would call presidential in this campaign?
It's an absurd idea. Look, you don't have to be involved in politics just to look at life. If you ask any female if she has a friend who's marrying some guy who's near 70 and there's a lot of things she doesn't like about him, but he says he's going to change, well, what would your advice be? You better like what you're getting, because that person's not going to change. The root of Donald Trump's biggest problem is this sort of emotionally damaged human that he is. This is something happened to this guy, and you can't fix that now. You can put him with this people, you can put him with these advisors and all of this, but at the core, Donald Trump is just someone who has terrible judgment, terrible emotional instability, and is just a completely unsuited person, as Charlie was saying, to be president of the United States. And there's nothing that anyone on this earth is going to do that can change this at this point in his life.
Let's take a look at how the spending went in Wisconsin. The anti-Trump groups combined to spend about $3 million. Team Cruz spent about $1.4 million. Team Kasich, almost $1 million. Donald Trump, the cheapest of them all, at $500,000. And Katie Packer, do those numbers look about right to you in terms of the spending that you were involved in Wisconsin?
Well, I think we spent about $2 million from our PAC in Wisconsin on a whole host of projects. And like you said, Donald Trump's own words are the most damaging thing for him. Charlie Sykes, who's my new hero, used Donald Trump's words against him. That's really the bulk of everything we've done from our Principles PAC, is just draw attention to Donald Trump's own words. And it's been very damaging to him. And we saw, you know, the comments he made about his poor young daughter. I feel sorry for Tiffany. She can't help who her dad is. He said equally sexually suggestive things about Ivanka Trump. And it's appalling that this is a guy that seems to only view women as having any value for sort of their sexual offerings. And it's disgusting and appalling. And like Stuart said, he's totally unsuitable to be president.
Charlie Sykes, I was talking to a Republican earlier this week who said that a friend of his told him he was abandoning Trump. He didn't disagree with Trump about anything, but he was leaving the Trump support because he could no longer defend Trump in conversations with his wife. He just couldn't continue the conversations with his wife where he was trying to defend Trump.
That is really a good point, because this is something I noticed. Donald Trump was very, very unpopular with women in Wisconsin. He had a 77% disapproval rating. Now, you didn't see that in the exit polls, a huge gender gap. But I think exactly what you said occurred, that a lot of men abandoned Donald Trump because the women in their lives were so repelled by his behavior toward women. Look, I'm a conservative. I have been writing about political correctness and the abuse of political correctness for more than 20 years. This is not about political correctness. This is about pure creepiness. And every time, you know, something like this happens, I think women see something and they communicate it to the men in their lives. And I've heard that story over and over and over again. Men who say, you know what, I just can't justify to my wife or my daughter that I'm supporting a man who has these attitudes, this contempt, this obvious objectifying contempt for women.
I want to take a look at the newest poll of New York likely Republican voters, Monmouth University poll. It shows Donald Trump at 52%, John Kasich at 25%, Ted Cruz at 17%. Stuart Stevens, that was completed just before last night's results in Wisconsin. How do you expect the results in Wisconsin to affect the polls going forward in New York?
I really don't think Wisconsin's going to have much impact on New York, to be honest. I think it's going to be an individual race. I think you've seen a lot of that. Look, Donald Trump has got to get over 50% here. That would mean he could take all the delegates. This is his home turf. I think that's a threshold level for him. And if he can be held under 50%, I think that will be seen as a legitimate victory for those who are opposing Donald Trump. It's really a question of sort of his ability to adapt again as a campaign organization. You know, they just have these rallies. They go to these places which usually aren't doing very well economically. They have these sort of hate fest, which is really what this is about. And can he grow? He got 35% in Wisconsin. That's pretty much what he's been getting. So are Republicans going to nominate someone who can't really get within their own party over 35 or 40%? That's a very troubling idea.
Stuart Stevens, Katie Packer, and Charlie Sykes, thank you all for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.